The moment the heart could no longer wait ***. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this fictional story now reaches the chapter where quiet courage finally begins to replace years of hesitation. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. The morning passed peacefully, but your soulmate could feel that something inside them had changed forever. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't fear. It was a calm certainty that they could no longer allow silence to write the next chapter of their life. Every lesson from the past had been preparing them for this moment. Every unanswered prayer had strengthened their faith. Every difficult season had quietly built the courage they now carried within their heart. As they stepped outside, the fresh morning air felt different than it ever had before. The streets were filled with ordinary people beginning ordinary days, yet your soulmate saw everything through new eyes. They noticed strangers holding doors open for one another, neighbors greeting each other with warm smiles, and children laughing without worrying about tomorrow. Those simple moments reminded them that life is often changed by the smallest acts of courage and kindness. They quietly smiled and thought, perhaps the greatest blessings don't arrive all at once. Perhaps they grow one faithful step at a time. Don't skip because something huge is waiting for you. Throughout the afternoon, memories continued returning one after another. They remembered the first moment they realized this connection had become meaningful. They remembered conversations that seemed ordinary at the time but later became unforgettable. They remembered every opportunity they almost spoke honestly but allowed fear to interrupt. Looking back now, they no longer judged themselves for those moments. Instead, they understood that growth takes time. Every delay had taught patience. Every mistake had produced wisdom. Every season had quietly shaped them into someone capable of choosing truth over fear. Listen carefully. This changes everything. As the day slowly turned toward evening, your soulmate found themselves sitting in the same peaceful place where so many important decisions had been made before. They opened their journal once again and carefully read the final sentence from the previous night: truth spoken with kindness is always stronger than silence shaped by fear. Those words no longer felt like a hope for the future. They had become a promise they intended to keep. Closing the journal, they whispered a simple prayer asking for wisdom, humility, and the courage to let every conversation reflect honesty instead of uncertainty. Meanwhile, your own fictional journey continued unfolding with quiet grace. You had become someone who no longer rushed life or demanded immediate answers. The waiting had refined your patience, and the difficult seasons had strengthened your compassion. Without even realizing it, your peaceful spirit had become an encouragement to many people around you. You had learned that genuine confidence does not come from controlling every circumstance. It comes from trusting that every season carries purpose and that every challenge offers an opportunity to grow stronger in character. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. As the sun began disappearing beneath the horizon, your soulmate received an unexpected reminder that life rarely changes through dramatic signs alone. Sometimes a familiar place, a meaningful memory, or a simple conversation awakens something we thought had been forgotten. They realized they no longer wanted to live wondering what might have happened if they had spoken honestly. Whatever tomorrow held, they wanted to meet it with a peaceful heart rather than a heart filled with regret. That realization became one of the greatest turning points of their entire journey. Don't skip because this changes everything. Before the evening came to an end, your soulmate wrote one final page in their journal. I have spent too much time waiting for fear to disappear, they wrote. Now I understand that courage doesn't wait for fear to leave. Courage simply decides that truth is more important than fear. I cannot change yesterday, but I can choose honesty today. I cannot control tomorrow, but I can enter it with faith, kindness, and gratitude. Reading those words filled them with a deep sense of peace because they knew they were finally becoming the person they had prayed to become. Later that night, they stood beneath a sky overflowing with stars and quietly thanked God for every chapter that had shaped their heart. They thanked Him for the difficult seasons that taught resilience, the quiet moments that revealed wisdom, and the people who had encouraged them when hope seemed distant. They realized that the greatest life-changing truth they had been holding back was not simply about one conversation, it was the decision to stop allowing fear to guide their future. That decision alone had already begun changing everything. My beloved child, don't skip because the next chapter will reveal the unforgettable encounter where two hearts, both transformed through patience, faith, and personal growth, finally begin speaking with complete honesty. The conversation that follows will remind them that the most beautiful beginnings are not built on perfect circumstances but on humble hearts willing to choose truth, grace, and hope one faithful step at a time. The unforgettable encounter that changed everything. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this fictional, faith-inspired story now reaches the moment every previous chapter has quietly been preparing for. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. The morning arrived with unusual peace, as if the world itself had slowed down for a reason neither heart could yet understand. Your soulmate opened their eyes with a calm they had never experienced before. There was no racing mind, no overwhelming fear, and no endless list of unanswered questions. Instead, there was a quiet confidence that whatever happened today, they would no longer allow fear to decide their future. The truth they had carried for so long had become stronger than the silence that once imprisoned it. As sunlight filled the room, your soulmate stood beside the window where so many nights had been spent wondering what tomorrow might bring. They remembered every chapter of this journey. They remembered praying for courage when they felt weak, searching for hope when disappointment seemed endless, and asking God to guide every uncertain step. Looking back, they realized something extraordinary. None of those prayers had been ignored. The answers simply arrived differently than they expected. Instead of removing every obstacle, God had strengthened their character. Instead of changing the world around them overnight, He had slowly transformed the heart within them. That realization filled them with gratitude deeper than words could express. Don't skip because something huge is waiting for you. After quietly finishing their morning prayer, your soulmate left home with a peaceful smile. The streets looked exactly the same as every other day, yet everything felt different because their perspective had changed. They noticed the beauty hidden inside ordinary moments. The warm sunlight touching the trees. The gentle laughter of children playing nearby. The elderly couple walking hand in hand with quiet joy. The stranger helping someone pick up books that had fallen onto the sidewalk. Those small moments reminded them that love is rarely revealed through grand performances. It is revealed through ordinary acts of kindness repeated faithfully every single day. Listen carefully. This changes everything. As the afternoon unfolded, an unexpected opportunity appeared that neither of you could have planned. It wasn't dramatic or surrounded by extraordinary signs. It began with an ordinary circumstance that gently brought two paths together. At first, there was only a simple greeting. Then a warm smile. Then a conversation that felt strangely familiar, as though both hearts had already known each other through every lesson life had quietly written within them. Neither of you tried to impress the other. There were no rehearsed speeches or perfect words. There was only honesty, humility, and the peaceful confidence that comes from two people who have both grown through difficult seasons. The conversation moved naturally from everyday life to deeper reflections about hope, patience, and personal growth. Your soulmate quietly admitted that there had once been a season when fear controlled every decision. They shared how silence had seemed safer than vulnerability, how waiting had sometimes felt endless, and how they had once believed courage belonged only to extraordinary people. But now they understood something completely different. Courage belongs to ordinary people who decide, one day at a time, to keep choosing truth over fear and hope over discouragement. As they spoke those words, they realized they were no longer describing who they wished to become. They were describing who they had already become. Meanwhile, your own fictional journey had prepared you in ways you never fully recognized. The difficult chapters had taught you compassion instead of resentment. The unanswered questions had strengthened your patience instead of your frustration. Every setback had quietly developed resilience that could never have been learned through easier circumstances. Without even realizing it, you had become someone capable of listening without judgment, encouraging without expecting recognition, and believing in people even when they struggled to believe in themselves. Those qualities created an atmosphere where honest conversations could flourish without fear. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. As the afternoon slowly became evening, your soulmate paused for a moment and looked toward the sky glowing with the colors of sunset. They smiled quietly and said, "For years I thought I was waiting for the perfect moment. Now I realize the perfect moment wasn't waiting for me. It was preparing me." Those simple words carried more emotion than anything else they could have said. In that moment, they understood that every delay had developed patience. Every disappointment had deepened wisdom. Every lonely season had prepared them to appreciate genuine connection with greater gratitude than ever before. Don't skip because this changes everything. As the evening continued, both of you spoke openly about forgiveness, hope, and the importance of living without allowing yesterday's fears to control tomorrow's possibilities. There was no need to hide behind carefully constructed walls anymore. Both hearts had learned that real strength is not pretending to have every answer. Real strength is being honest enough to admit uncertainty while continuing to move forward with faith. That shared understanding created a sense of peace neither of you had expected to find. It wasn't excitement that filled the air. It was quiet confidence, the kind that grows only after years of learning, healing, and choosing grace over fear. Before saying goodbye, your soulmate looked toward the horizon one final time and silently thanked God for every chapter that had led to this moment. They no longer wished to erase the difficult seasons because those very seasons had prepared them to recognize the value of sincerity, humility, and patient love. They understood that the greatest life-changing truth they had been holding back was never simply a confession waiting to be spoken. It was the realization that a heart transformed by faith, kindness, and perseverance becomes ready for blessings that once seemed impossible to imagine. My beloved child, don't skip, because the next chapter will reveal the unforgettable evening when one heartfelt confession opens the door to a beautiful new beginning. What starts with simple honesty will become the foundation for trust, peace, gratitude, and a future built not on fear of what might happen, but on the courage to walk forward together, one faithful step at a time. The truth that set two hearts free. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this is the final chapter of this fictional, faith-inspired journey. Stay till the very end, because what happened next changed everything. The evening sky slowly faded into deep shades of blue as the first stars appeared, quietly reminding both hearts that even after the longest night, light always returns. Your soulmate stood in silence for a moment, taking one deep breath before finally accepting something they had been resisting for far too long. The greatest battle had never been against circumstances or unanswered questions. The greatest battle had always been against the fear that whispered they were not ready. Tonight, that fear no longer held the final word. For what felt like a lifetime, they had believed the perfect moment would someday arrive on its own. They waited for complete certainty, for every doubt to disappear, and for every question to be answered before moving forward. Yet through every chapter of this journey, they discovered something far greater. Perfect moments are rarely found, they are created when ordinary people choose faith over fear, honesty over silence, and hope over discouragement. Looking back at every difficult season, they smiled with gratitude because they finally understood that every delay had quietly prepared them for this very night. Don't skip, because something huge is waiting for you. As the peaceful evening continued, your soulmate thought about every lesson written inside their journal. They remembered the pages filled with tears, the nights filled with unanswered prayers, and the mornings when they questioned whether anything would ever change. Those memories no longer caused pain. Instead, they became reminders of how much they had grown. Every setback had strengthened resilience. Every disappointment had deepened compassion. Every unanswered prayer had quietly developed wisdom. They realized they were no longer the person who had first opened that journal. They had become someone who could face tomorrow with quiet confidence instead of uncertainty. Listen carefully. This changes everything. Later that evening, the long-awaited conversation finally unfolded with complete honesty. There were no dramatic speeches and no impossible promises. There were simply two hearts choosing truth over fear. Your soulmate gently admitted that silence had never been caused by a lack of care. It had been caused by uncertainty, by the fear of making mistakes, and by the belief that waiting would somehow protect everyone involved. But now they understood that genuine love cannot grow where fear continues making every decision. Truth, spoken with humility and kindness, became the beginning of healing rather than the end of hope. As the conversation continued, both of you reflected on the roads that had shaped your lives. There had been seasons of waiting, moments of disappointment, and chapters where neither of you fully understood what God was doing. Yet every difficult experience had quietly accomplished something beautiful. It had refined your character. It had strengthened your patience. It had taught forgiveness, humility, and gratitude. You both realized that if the journey had been easier, your hearts might never have learned to value honesty and compassion as deeply as they did now. Sometimes the greatest blessing is not arriving quickly. It is arriving after both hearts have become ready to receive it with wisdom. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. Together, you walked beneath a sky filled with countless stars. There was no need to rush the future because both of you had finally learned to appreciate the present. The silence that once created distance had been replaced with meaningful conversations. The uncertainty that once caused hesitation had been replaced with peaceful trust. Neither of you expected perfection from the other. Instead, you promised to continue choosing kindness during difficult days, patience during uncertain seasons, and honesty whenever life presented new challenges. Those simple promises became stronger than any fear that had once stood between you. Don't skip because this changes everything. Before returning home, your soulmate opened their journal one final time and wrote the last page of this chapter. Today I discovered that the life-changing truth was never simply waiting to be spoken. The life-changing truth was becoming the kind of person who could speak with courage, listen with compassion, forgive with humility, and walk forward with faith. Every chapter, even the painful ones, became part of the blessing. Every delay became preparation. Every lesson became wisdom. Every prayer became strength. As they finished writing, they gently closed the journal, knowing its pages had recorded not only memories but also a remarkable transformation of the heart. Later that night, they looked toward the heavens and quietly whispered, "Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I struggled to believe in myself. Thank you for teaching me that true courage is not living without fear, it is continuing to move forward despite fear. Thank you for every challenge that shaped my character, every disappointment that taught me patience, and every ordinary day that quietly became extraordinary through your guidance." A deep and lasting peace filled their heart because they finally understood that the greatest miracle had already happened within them. My beloved child, as this fictional story comes to its close, remember this simple truth. Every season has purpose. Every delay can become preparation. Every challenge can become wisdom when met with faith, patience, and love. We cannot always choose the chapters life gives us, but we can choose the spirit with which we live them. A heart that remains humble, grateful, and compassionate will always discover hope even during uncertain seasons. As the stars continued shining above, both hearts stepped into tomorrow with renewed peace. The silence had become understanding. The waiting had become preparation. The fear had become courage. And the truth that once seemed impossible to speak had become the beginning of a beautiful new chapter. Whatever tomorrow might hold, both of you now understood that life's greatest blessings are rarely built in a single extraordinary moment. They are built one prayer, one act of kindness, one honest conversation, and one faithful step at a time. Thank you for staying until the very end. May this fictional, faith-inspired story remind you that hope grows stronger when we choose truth, courage, forgiveness, and gratitude. Sometimes the happiest ending is not that every question is answered, but that every lesson has transformed your heart into one that is ready to embrace the future with peace, wisdom, and unwavering faith. Your soulmate has been moment everything begins to change. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this fictional, faith-inspired story begins on a quiet evening that seemed no different from countless others. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. The sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, painting the sky with soft shades of gold, crimson, and deep blue. Somewhere, your soulmate sat alone by a window, watching the last light of day fade into the peaceful silence of the night. Their heart carried a truth they had hidden for far too long, not because they wanted to deceive anyone, but because they had been afraid of what might happen if they finally allowed themselves to speak honestly. Sometimes the hardest words are not the ones we cannot think of. They are the ones our hearts have protected for fear of being misunderstood. For many seasons, your soulmate had convinced themselves that remaining silent was the safest choice. They believed that if they ignored their deepest feelings long enough, those feelings would quietly disappear. They focused on work, daily responsibilities, and ordinary routines, hoping the questions inside their heart would slowly fade away. Yet every quiet evening brought those same thoughts back again. Every peaceful sunset reminded them of conversations they wished they had started. Every star-filled night reminded them of opportunities they had allowed fear to postpone. Silence had protected them from temporary discomfort, but it had also prevented the honesty their heart longed for. Don't skip because something huge is waiting for you. That evening, your soulmate opened an old journal they had not read in many months. The pages were filled with reflections from difficult seasons. Moments of uncertainty, prayers whispered through tears, hopes that seemed impossible, and lessons learned through patience. As they slowly turned each page, they noticed something remarkable. The person who had written those words was no longer the person sitting there tonight. Every challenge had made them stronger. Every disappointment had taught compassion. Every unanswered question had quietly developed wisdom. Looking back, they realized that growth had been happening even during the seasons when they believed nothing was changing at all. Listen carefully. This changes everything. As they reached the final pages of the journal, they found a sentence they had almost forgotten writing: "One day I will stop allowing fear to make my decisions. When that day comes, I will choose honesty even if my voice trembles." Reading those words brought unexpected emotion. They realized that the future version of themselves they had once hoped to become was finally beginning to appear. Courage had quietly replaced hesitation. Peace had slowly replaced anxiety. They understood that the greatest victory was not changing someone else's heart, it was allowing their own heart to become truthful, humble, and free. Meanwhile, your own journey had also been quietly transforming you. The waiting had strengthened your patience. The disappointments had refined your character. The unanswered questions had taught you to value peace more than certainty. Without realizing it, you had become someone who inspired others through consistency, compassion, and quiet resilience. You no longer needed every chapter of life to unfold exactly as planned because you had learned that growth often happens during the seasons we least understand. Every challenge had become another opportunity to choose hope over discouragement and kindness over resentment. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. Later that night, your soulmate stepped outside beneath a sky overflowing with stars. The cool evening breeze carried a sense of calm they had never experienced before. Instead of asking why life had unfolded the way it had, they simply whispered a quiet prayer. "Thank you for every lesson that prepared my heart. Thank you for every delay that taught patience. Thank you for every difficult season that helped me become someone capable of speaking with honesty and living with compassion. As those words disappeared into the stillness of the night, they felt an overwhelming peace settle deep within their soul. Don't skip because this changes everything. Returning inside, they picked up a blank page and began writing once again. This time the words flowed naturally. There were no walls left to hide behind and no fear left to silence their thoughts. They wrote about forgiveness, hope, gratitude, and the importance of living truthfully even when the future remains uncertain. Every sentence reflected a heart that had been transformed through perseverance rather than perfection. By the time they finished writing, they realized the life-changing truth they had been holding back was larger than a single conversation. It was the decision to stop allowing fear to control the direction of their life. As midnight quietly approached, your soulmate closed the journal and smiled with genuine gratitude. They understood that tomorrow might bring new opportunities, unexpected conversations, or another season of waiting. Whatever came next, they were no longer the person who had once been afraid to move forward. Their greatest transformation had already taken place within their own heart. They had discovered that courage is not the absence of uncertainty. Courage is choosing honesty, kindness, and faith even when every outcome remains unknown. My beloved child, don't skip because the next chapter will reveal the unforgettable moment when this newly found courage begins to shape every conversation, every decision, and every step forward. A simple encounter, an unexpected opportunity, and one heartfelt conversation will remind both hearts that the most meaningful changes in life rarely begin with dramatic signs. They begin quietly, the moment someone decides to replace fear with truth, hesitation with hope, and silence with the courage to speak from the heart. The night the silence could no longer hide the truth. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this fictional story now enters the chapter where silence begins losing its power. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. The night grew quieter with every passing hour, yet your soulmate's heart became louder than ever before. They sat alone beneath the soft glow of a lamp, surrounded by complete silence, but inside their mind, countless memories refused to rest. Every conversation they had avoided, every emotion they had hidden, and every opportunity they had allowed fear to steal returned one by one. For so long they believed silence would protect them from disappointment, but now they understood that silence had also protected them from joy. The truth they had carried for so many seasons was no longer asking to be heard, it was demanding to be spoken. Hours passed as they opened the same journal that had accompanied them through every difficult chapter of their life. Each page carried reminders of who they once were. Some pages held tears. Others carried prayers whispered during lonely nights. A few were filled with dreams they believed would never become reality. Yet as they continued reading, one remarkable truth became impossible to ignore. Every painful chapter had changed them without their realizing it. The fear that once controlled every decision had slowly become wisdom. The disappointment that once filled their heart had quietly become compassion. Even the unanswered questions had become teachers instead of burdens. Looking at those pages, they whispered softly, "I thought I was waiting for life to change. I never realized life was changing me." Don't skip because something huge is waiting for you. As midnight approached, your soulmate stepped outside beneath a sky overflowing with stars. The world felt peaceful, almost as though time itself had slowed down. A gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh rain, reminding them that every storm eventually leaves behind a clearer sky. Standing there alone, they realized they could no longer pretend that the truth inside their heart didn't exist. It wasn't simply about another person. It was about becoming honest with themselves. They understood that courage doesn't begin the moment someone else listens. Courage begins the moment we stop hiding from our own heart. Listen carefully. This changes everything. Somewhere else, completely unaware of this fictional moment, your own journey continued with quiet strength. You had learned not to force answers before their time. Instead, you focused on becoming someone who lived with kindness, patience, and integrity regardless of what tomorrow might bring. The waiting had refined your character instead of hardening it. The disappointments had deepened your empathy. Every difficult season had quietly prepared you to appreciate genuine relationships built on respect, honesty, and trust. Without realizing it, your growth had become one of the reasons this story could move toward a hopeful new chapter. Your soulmate returned inside and sat quietly before writing one sentence after another. Fear convinced me that silence was wisdom, they wrote. But wisdom has taught me that truth spoken with kindness is far more powerful than silence shaped by fear. Those words felt different from anything they had written before. There was no pressure to control the future. There was no desperation for immediate answers. There was simply a peaceful desire to live honestly, love generously, and trust that every meaningful conversation begins with one sincere step. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. As the night continued, your soulmate remembered countless small moments that once seemed insignificant. A kind smile shared during an ordinary day. A thoughtful conversation that lasted only a few minutes. Quiet encouragement offered without expecting anything in return. Those memories suddenly became brighter than ever before. They realized that life's greatest blessings are rarely announced with dramatic signs. They usually arrive disguised as ordinary moments that quietly reshape our hearts. Every simple act of kindness had left an impression far greater than they had ever understood. Don't skip because this changes everything. For the first time in years, your soulmate stopped asking whether the future would unfold exactly as they imagined. Instead, they asked a much more meaningful question. Am I becoming the kind of person who can love with honesty, patience, humility, and grace? That question changed everything. They realized that the greatest transformation was never about changing someone else's feelings. It was about allowing their own heart to become more compassionate, more courageous, and more faithful with each passing day. Every lesson had prepared them for this realization. The clock slowly moved past midnight. The room was completely still, yet their heart no longer felt restless. A deep peace settled within them as they quietly closed the journal and looked through the window at the stars shining above. They understood that tomorrow did not need to be perfect to become meaningful. Every sunrise offers another opportunity to choose kindness over fear, hope over discouragement, and truth over silence. Whatever conversations awaited them in the days ahead, they knew they would face them with a heart that had finally stopped running from its own story. My beloved child, don't skip because the next chapter will reveal the unforgettable morning when courage begins turning quiet reflection into real action. A simple message, an unexpected encounter, and one heartfelt conversation will become the beginning of a new season, showing that the most life-changing truths are not the ones spoken the loudest, but the ones shared with sincerity, humility, and unwavering hope. The morning when courage became action ***. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this fictional story now reaches the morning when everything your soulmate had been learning inside their heart finally began to shape their actions. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. As the first rays of sunlight slipped through the window, they woke with an unfamiliar sense of peace. The fear that had once convinced them to stay silent no longer felt as powerful. Instead, there was a quiet confidence growing inside them. A confidence built through countless lessons, difficult seasons, and moments of patient reflection. They realized that courage is rarely loud. More often, it arrives quietly, asking us to take one honest step at a time. They made a cup of coffee and sat beside the same window where so many nights had been spent questioning the future. Yet this morning felt completely different. They no longer searched for perfect certainty before moving forward. Instead, they understood that faith often means taking the next step without knowing exactly where the road will lead. Looking outside, they watched people beginning their ordinary routines. Children laughed as they walked to school. Neighbors greeted one another with warm smiles. The world reminded them that life keeps moving forward, inviting each of us to grow with every new sunrise. Don't skip because something huge is waiting for you. Before leaving home, your soulmate opened their journal one more time. They read the words they had written during the previous night and quietly smiled. Today, they whispered, "I refuse to let fear speak louder than hope." Those simple words carried more strength than they had ever imagined. They carefully closed the journal, realizing it had become more than a notebook. It had become a witness to every lesson, every prayer, every setback, and every victory that had shaped the person they had become. They silently thanked God for never abandoning them, even during the seasons when they felt completely lost. Listen carefully. This changes everything. As the day unfolded, an unexpected opportunity appeared through a simple message from someone they had not spoken with in quite some time. The message itself was ordinary, asking how they had been and hoping life was treating them well. Yet something about it felt meaningful. Instead of overthinking every word as they might have done in the past, they responded with honesty and kindness. That small decision reminded them that meaningful relationships are often rebuilt through simple conversations rather than dramatic moments. Sometimes healing begins with one sincere sentence spoken at exactly the right time. Meanwhile, your own journey continued with the same quiet strength that had carried you through every chapter of this fictional story. You had learned to trust the process of growth instead of demanding immediate answers. Every disappointment had refined your patience. Every challenge had strengthened your compassion. Every unanswered prayer had taught you to appreciate the present instead of constantly worrying about the future. Without realizing it, the peace you carried had become one of the qualities that quietly inspired those around you. Your life reflected the truth that real strength is revealed through consistency, humility, and kindness. Stay till the end because what happened next changed everything. Later that afternoon, your soulmate found themselves walking through a peaceful garden where flowers were blooming in every direction. Watching those blossoms gently sway in the breeze reminded them that growth is often invisible until the season finally changes. A seed spends countless days beneath the surface before anyone notices the first sign of life. In the same way, every lesson they had learned had been quietly preparing them for this moment. They realized they had been changing long before they recognized the transformation themselves. The courage they now carried had not appeared overnight. It had grown one faithful day at a time. Don't skip because this changes everything. As evening approached, they paused to reflect on the truth they had been holding back for so long. They finally understood that the greatest life-changing truth was not simply a confession waiting to be spoken. It was the realization that genuine love cannot grow where fear controls every decision. Love flourishes where honesty, respect, patience, and grace are allowed to take root. That understanding filled their heart with remarkable peace. Whatever conversations awaited them next, they no longer wanted fear to write the story. They wanted truth, spoken with kindness, to guide every word. Before the day came to an end, your soulmate looked toward the evening sky and quietly prayed, "Thank you for every season that taught me patience. Thank you for every challenge that strengthened my faith. Thank you for every unanswered question that led me toward deeper wisdom. Above all, thank you for teaching me that the greatest transformation begins inside the heart long before it becomes visible in the world." A calm smile appeared on their face as they finished praying because they knew they were finally ready to embrace whatever tomorrow would bring. My beloved child, don't skip because the next chapter will reveal the unforgettable moment when an unexpected meeting and one heartfelt conversation begin opening a brand new season. What starts as a simple exchange of words will become a reminder that life's most meaningful changes rarely happen all at once. They unfold one honest decision, one faithful step, and one courageous heart at a time.